My name is Steve Butler with company Beekeepers. I'd like to thank Stan Gore with Honky Goose Media for being here, and Ashley Ralph and Justin Russell from Prime Bees. We're going to talk a little bit about swarms today.
This class is more focused on swarms, which is like my kind of removal personally. Much easier. And one of the things we wanted to start with was talking about why bees swarm, which y'all probably know, but there's two kinds of swarms that you'll find. And that's why people say not all swarms are really gentle. You know, there's different reasons why a swarm may happen. So you still want to address these guys with a little bit of caution. Don't stick your face right up to them unless you've tested them out maybe first. But you have the reproduction-based swarms, means they're leaving behind a healthy hive. They've left behind resources and bees, and they're doing this as the natural part of the whole hive or colony reproducing. And then you've got absconding, which generally can result in maybe testier bees. They're not as happy. They maybe didn't get to fill up on their honey in stores and stuff before they left, depending on what caused them to leave. And it's usually done as a last-ditch effort to save the colony.
Yeah, and the absconding, you see a lot of absconding, especially if you have a flood, and you hear about a bunch of people's hives washing away, and all of a sudden you got a bunch of swarms in trees. Those aren't swarms; those are abscond. Those are ditch efforts to get away from the hive and not to drown. And be really careful with absconds, because those are the ones that'll get you.
Yeah. That, and another cause of absconding is small hive beetles. So small hive beetles will move in, they'll attack a hive. Once it gets weak, they'll just decide, hey, we can find a better place to live, and let the hive die off. So
one of the things that I like to talk about, I hear a lot of people that are like, oh, the bees have survived forever without our help. But really, the chances of a swarm surviving in today's society, like with as many people as we have, who see them and spray them because they are maybe fearful, I think it's really important for us as beekeepers to educate people on swarms and bees in general. So I put this in here just to remind you how important you are as beekeepers. They have a much higher chance of living with your help, especially in that swarm state. They're extremely vulnerable. They've only got enough food to last them for a little bit of time. And they are exposed to humans that maybe don't trust them, predators like birds and anything else. And then, of course, the weather. Like I saw a swarm trying to move into a water box, like a water heater box, the day before it rained, and they hopefully got out. I don't know that they did. So there's a lot of things that can keep them from surviving. So Steve always says you have to get there super fast, like yesterday. If you hear of a swarm, get there immediately, because every minute counts.
So my nickname is Steve on the Way Butler, and that comes from catching swarms. So with that said, I started a Facebook page, and Facebook is a huge social media advertising phenomenon out there as far as I'm concerned. But it's called Bee Swarm Removers of Texas, and anybody's welcome to come join, and we post swarms up there. One of my big pet peeves is if there's a swarm out there and you're going to go get it, go right away. Don't wait 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. If you say you're getting it, get it. Because what happens if you don't, and that swarm moves into somebody's house, then they got to call me or someone like me and pay a fee to have the bees removed. And I have plenty of work already. I don't need more. So, I'd kind of like Justin to speak a little bit on the survival of bees and keeping them, because I feel it's real important before you go out and capture a swarm or do a removal that you have an understanding of what it takes for these bees to survive. Otherwise, you might as well just leave them be and let them do their own thing. So if Justin will step in and do a little talking. But one quick thing is, somebody had asked in the last class about the thermal image. This is the FLIR camera. It just hooks to your iPhone. I don't know how many of y'all can see, and can you hold that, Justin? And I can't see where it's focused at, but can you find my hand back there? Yeah. So it can read through and find that thermal image of of something. So
it's really hard to see, but this is a FLIR. If you're trying to find stuff in structures and whatnot, this thing is invaluable.
yeah.
What's it called again?
It's a FLIR. It's an infrared camera that hooks to your iPhone. They make one for Android as well. And FLIR does make a standalone camera as well. Those are a little bit more pricey than the ones that hook onto a phone because you're already supplying the screen. And you can take pictures with the camera on your phone and then be able to text message it to people and show off what you're doing and stuff like that.
Where are you finding that and how much are they?
Go Amazon. You can find anything on
Go
Amazon.
online.
I think about $280, maybe $240, somewhere up there. It's a little, it's expensive, but I don't know if y'all have ever cracked into a wall or something like that. That gets expensive too. So if you know what you're doing and you're going to the right point, then you might be able to save that money on your first job.
And you can see water pipes and electrical wires and other things in the images if you learn how to use one too. So it prevents you from cutting into a wire or something that might cause you harm or death. So they're a good tool to have. Go ahead, Jess.
All right, so Steve didn't talk anything about actually capturing the swarm, which is very important. If you do see a swarm, it's kind of one of those things you see basically a football of bees and you want to capture it. It's like, hey, I want those bees. I want to take them home. I want to put them in a box. I want to make some honey. Those are all the things that us as beekeepers try to do, and you're like, they're free. So as Steve was saying, get there, and then basically you got to figure out how to put them in a box.
Coming back to that.
We will?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's just skip, go to, you got them in a box.
Survival.
So all of these little boxes right here are 5-frame nuke boxes. These are what I really prefer to do grow outs on. If the swarm is a very large swarm, then you might think about putting it in an 8-frame or 10-frame equipment. But these are little 5-frame nukes. They actually have jar feeders on top, but you can also run frame feeders. One of the greatest things about a swarm is kind of it's basically a package of bees for free, and it's ready to go. They're loaded up, they're ready to draw a foundation, they're ready to lay eggs. You know that queen's already a producing queen because it's the old queen from the hive. Ready to go kind of thing. But the big thing is putting them in a box and keeping them in that box. So I don't know if you can see it, but I'm a huge fan of the spin disc.
There's one on the vacuum here.
Yeah, one of
It's
these
same
suckers.
disc.
So if you notice this, you got little holes. That's for traveling. Keep them in. Make sure they don't get you while you're in your car. You got full blown, so it's an established hive. Let them do whatever they want. But then the great one is this queen excluder. So if you have a little nuke box like that, and you have one of these little nuke spin discs on it, throw all your bees in a box, and you put it on the queen excluder. It's going to allow the workers to come and go, but it's going to keep that queen in there. And it's basically kind of making her sit tight. One of the big problems though is if there's a large number of drones in that swarm, drones can't get through this either. So you got to kind of figure out what you're doing because you might have a bunch of drones in there and you're going to get a clog. And what happens is all these little drones are going to die trying to leave because they want to leave and go do what they do. So I have noticed that I like to check on my swarm, after about 3 days to see if there were drones in there. And if there are drones in there, they're going to pop out so fast that you didn't even know it just happened. But one of the major points is once you throw a swarm in a box, make sure you got all your frames in there because what they're going to start doing right away is drawing foundation and trying to make a hive. If you're missing a frame in there, I'll tell you right now, they're going to draw comb where there is no frame and you're going to be like, oh, what is this? And it's going to turn into a little cutout. So I like to throw all my bees in a box, tight, close it up, leave it for about 3 days. I don't even want to open it for 3-4 days, let them get going. It's one reason I like these jar feeders on top because I can keep giving them feed without even opening the box. I just kind of do that number.
So what do you mean close them up?
Close them up.
To the excluder.
On. So you want your workers to come and go. They need to go outside, use the restroom, do things like that. Plus it's Texas, it's really, really hot. Stan.
How long do you leave the queen excluder on?
I will leave the queen excluder on until she starts laying. And once there's enough drawn out foundation, or if for some reason I have some extra foundation laying around that's already drawn, and I throw it in there and she starts laying right away, that's kind of an anchor, and that's going to keep them there. Whenever they have foundation, they have supplies, groceries per se, they don't really want to leave. It's one of those great things that if you already have bees and you can take a little bit of brood and throw it in there with the swarm, you're gonna get that production going so much quicker because they already have that foundation and they're a lot less likely to leave. And it has something that she could straight away start laying on. Drawn comb is Beekeepers' #1 value. Like that's what
It's like gold, you know. So
If you don't have a disc for the queen excluder, you can actually still use a regular like plastic excluder. I'm sure you'll have heard this tip, but just in case you haven't, you can cut that and set it in front of your hive down flush so that they have to go through it instead. We like to draw them out in these nukes for the first reason of just keeping them in a tight container does help our survival a lot, but I know that's not an option for everybody, especially maybe on short notice, so that would be like maybe plan B.
So another setup, so if you're running 10 frame or 8 frame equipment, you don't have a nuke box, you don't have anything laying around. So most people run a bottom board. And so if you take your queen excluder, you run your bottom board, run a queen excluder on top of that bottom board, and then set your hive, and then put all the bees in that box. They can only go out through a queen excluder. So you have a full queen excluder on the bottom of your box. And that's a great setup to use. Usually everyone has all that equipment on hand, and you are gonna probably lose some drones in the process, but you're gonna keep that queen in the box.
she has a question for you.
Yes.
Okay, when you got your bees in there, you feed them?
Yes, I do.
Yes. What is your solution? 1-to-1 or 2-to-1?
During the summer,
Okay, so I'm going to say something that a lot of people don't want to hear. They don't care, really. And everyone asks, they're like, hey, so how do you mix it? I'm like, man, I just throw some sugar and I throw some water and I just give it to them. And they really are going to do what they want to do. You could take sugar and you could throw it out on your patio and spit on it, and they're going to come and eat it.
the textbook answer is 1-to-1 during the summer, 2-to-1 during colder weather. So that would be what you would kind of use in your mind. But he's right, at that stage, they just want carbohydrate.
And whenever I'm mixing something in my head, I go 1 pint of water to 1 pound of sugar. So then I started to pull out my phone and do some calculations because I don't know how many pints are in a gallon, and next thing you know. So I always just eyeball it. I take a 5-gallon bucket, fill it up about halfway with sugar, throw some water in it, mix it up, and I just roll. I don't want to put too much time and effort into it. I'd rather just be out in nature and kind of do the thing.
Yeah.
So if anybody's ever sweating, like making sugar water, don't sweat it. It's just feeding. They're gonna take
stressful
it.
things.
Yeah. Small hive beetles. Watch those instead.
That's a basic question. When we get down and talk about how to feed bees, whether it's 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 or fall, spring, doesn't make a difference. Basically what we're asking is how much water do we want the bees to take out of the feed before they use it. If we feed them 2-to-1, it takes less time to get the water down out so they get to the level of concentration that they like.
Yeah. So if you're trying to put on weight,
Isn't that really bottom line what you come out?
yeah, if you're trying to put on heavy weight, say you just do it. You honey harvest, you're going into fall, you just did your fall harvest, and you steal all their groceries. And you're trying to put heavy weight on it, yeah, you want thick syrup. Especially if you're one of those people like me who robs everything and then feeds sugar, because sugar's a lot cheaper than honey.
And then the next thing is the more of this fluid that they have is a stimulant for the production of wax. Is that not correct?
Yeah, so they are going to pull. I'll water.
Produce more wax in those 6 wax glands, the more fluid that they process, correct?
Yeah, so they need those carbohydrates.
Yes,
they need to run
and
it.
yet you're limited to an age range of bees too.
What?
Bees have to be a certain age in order for those glands to be mature and for them to produce that.
Make sure you repeat the question if it's a single question.
That's not for the honeybee.
That's not just
The basic principle is is how much water do you want them to extract from what you're feeding them to get to the level they want? And then the handling of the fluid promotes the production of wax by the leaves that are able to produce wax, which is needed to build the comb.
Sure.
The engineer in me wants to get it exact.
Oh, I know.
I actually figured it out. If you put 25 pounds of sugar in a 5-gallon bucket, fill it full of water, mix it, and then fill it back where you got full 5 gallons, it's almost perfect.
It's pretty close. That's what I was.
Now, does
3 gallons of water with 25.
does your water have minerals in it?
It does.
Did you account for that?
Yeah. I put a lot of thought into it and ran it, and I got a couple boxes of bugs, and I've done a lot of experimenting. I've done a lot of stupid stuff. I usually have to do stupid stuff about twice before I actually learn it. Like, hey, this is working, this isn't working. My biggest thing is, are they taking feed? If they're not taking feed, I'm not going to feed them. If I'm trying to do a heavy growth on bees, I'm going to be feeding, and I'm going to get them produce more and more. And this is a split yard. Actually, this is my split yard. So these are all just mating nukes that whenever we do splits, this is what.
Split 5 to a box of 4.
Right, this is more of Chris Moore's area, but whenever I do a split, I do 2 frames, 1 frame of supplies, 1 frame of brood with bees, then empty frames, queen cell split.
We had a question over here, and then we probably should
Yeah.
keep going.
These boxes that you're using, is this like a big box that's going to be your base, or are you moving it again later?
We're in from this is a 5, yeah, this is just 5 frames for temporary use, and then they'll move into a 10 frame hive once they've matured out. We realize not everybody wants to go through this step, but we've found much higher survivability for things like swarms, vulnerable bees, in smaller containers.
And I will give this.
So we're stressing that a lot. It is maybe worth having a few of these.
So a lot of people don't have these laying around and they don't want to build these. But a lot of people in this room have probably bought a 5-frame nuke from a supplier, and they're going to give you a cardboard box or like a plastic corrugated box. Save those boxes, because those boxes, there's nothing wrong with those boxes. If you want to start off a swarm in one of those boxes, do it to it. Throw some frames in there, start them off, because that person who supplied you with those bees probably grew bees in those boxes before you got them.
And it's one of the best boxes to catch a swarm in. They're lightweight, you can hold them up. So we need to move on. Where we at? When you slid over.
I have lots of little videos.
All right, not so fast, you're making me dizzy. So,
Actually, I'm sorry. There we go. Yeah, we already talked about that.
we went quickly. Well, have a plan. Okay, so you want to have a plan when you're going to catch them. So everyone in this room, who's interested in catching a swarm? All right, who has a nuke box? All right, the rest of you need to go get a nuke box and put it in your trunk. Who has their nuke box with them? Oh man, y'all don't want to swarm, do you? So you got to be prepared to go get a swarm. You need something to put it in. You need a bag, a box. I think I heard of some gal taking her skirt and putting one in there. So, you know, something to put that swarm in. So have a plan on how you're going to get it, how you're going to transport it, and where you're going to put it. So if you don't have that in motion, don't go get that swarm. Have a plan where to put it, because you know they've only got a couple days worth of stores, and you need to do these certain steps to keep them to surviving. So let another beekeeper get it. You know, call somebody that you know is prepped for it, and maybe they'll return the favor down the line. Stay calm. You know, when working bees, any type of bees, just stay calm, move gentle, don't make fast movements. I think we'll have a clip here of me removing some bees barehanded kind of later, but find the queen if you can. That's always a key. You know she's there, but you don't necessarily have to find her. You can just wait till they march to her. They'll find her for you. If you don't find it, the bees will tell you where she's at. Queen excluder, we already talked about that. Containers, Cardboard box, a bucket. I like to, if I'm getting them in a bucket and sometimes I've got a long pole, I'll just tape the handle to it or tie the handle to it, shake them off of a limb up there. But I like to put a drop of lemongrass oil in that bucket first. That basically when they fall in there and that lemongrass is in there, so it simulates the nasal pheromone and kind of holds them in that bucket long enough. And I'll take that bucket and kind of swirl it around, look for the queen. And if I got her, I'll get a clip. And I think, do y'all all know what a queen clip is? Everybody, or anybody not?
Yeah, we've got some notes.
So, yeah, Justin will hold one up here in a minute. But I catch her in a queen clip and throw her in the box and the rest of the bees will just come. You can leave the box overnight, pick it up that evening if you want, or just stay around and get them. Plastic tubs, be careful about plastic tubs. You know, there's no ventilation, but you can poke holes in them. A regular Langstroth or a nuke box or the cardboard or plastic nuke boxes. Just about anything that'll hold a nuke, a basket with a towel over it, a cloth over it. I don't know if you want to drive around in your car like that.
These special techniques that queen clips so you don't whack her?
Just move slow and gentle and just kind of get her, kind of hurt her around a little bit. And when you see her, and then just open the clip up and gently set it down and let it gently come together and give them time to move up. And, you know, just try to watch. There's not really any practice with it. Practice on drones. That's what I recommend when people want to mark queens or work with queens, is practice catching drones. And, you know, they're kind of expendable anyway. I hate to say that, you know, since that's the male population, but, you know.
Have you thought of, I have a vacuum, and I have a box, suck the bees and go into this box. Have you used that approach?
Yeah, it's on.
Yes, we'll get to that here in a little bit. So, okay, so basic tools for removal. If you'll notice, this is my vacuum box and it's sitting right here. So with this vacuum box, you can put frames in there and everything ready to go. Plug your hose in to the vacuum. Turn the vacuum on, suck the bees in there, pull the hose, turn the disc to vent. You're done, you got them in there. I carry a hose that's 40 foot long and a pole that'll go 30 foot or so and a 12-foot ladder, A-frame ladder on my truck. You know, if I put the ladder in the truck and, you know, finagle, I can get about 45 feet up in the air and suck a swarm off a limb with that thing. So, and it has an adjustable suction, so you want to be careful. And use a large diameter hose. Don't try to suck a swarm through a 3/4 or 1 inch hole. It just, you're going to get too much congestion going through there. Most people shake them. There's a lot of different ways to catch them, but so you want to have a hive tool to work your box with. They're just handy to have for a lot of purposes. A smoker, you know, a lot of times I'll get a swarm in a box and there'll be bees around there. You can actually take your smoker and just kind of smoke around the box on both sides, and you can herd them. It's kind of like herding cats, isn't that what you say?
Herding cats.
So you herd them into that entrance and kind of hurry them along. So it's always good to have a smoker. And then if they're absconded bees, they can be a little aggressive and you may want a smoker just to keep yourself from getting lit up. Queen clips, we talked about that, and queen cages if you want to cage her. This is the, well, yeah, rubber bands if it's an open air hive. And sometimes you'll get a call for a swarm and you get there and it's not a swarm, it's an open air hive. So be prepared for that, you know. So clippers, that's an important thing to have, and I carry somewhere in here,
Like little
just a little pair of pruning shears to clip little limbs out of the way, and I also carry a bigger pruning shears, and I carry a chainsaw and all that other good stuff too. So kind of be prepared on that, because a lot of times you're clipping them, you got a lot of different little branches, and you can clip some of that stuff out of your way before you shake them in the box. It just helps. The repellent, the tea tree oil, honeybee gone, Fisher's Bee Quick. So when you get a swarm and that queen pheromone hangs around for so long, if you shake a swarm off into a box, then you'll find a lot of the bees are going back up to the same spot because their pheromone's still there. Well, you can shake that spot off or smoke the bees away from it and spray that repellent on there. Then the bees don't want to cluster back up on there, and they'll be more apt to find her and move into the box faster. So it really helps to spray some repellent on that area where the bees were when there's a swarm. The lemongrass oil, we talked about that, putting it in the bucket or the box to help attract them in there. And then the bee vac for those hard to reach places. So several ways to catch them. Scooping them up, I mean, you can scoop them with your hand, a piece of cardboard, a piece of paper, a dustpan, and sometimes a bee brush helps. So that's one way you can just get them, is scooping them up. Shaking them, that's a real traditional way. You just set a box underneath there. Some people put a sheet down on the ground, a white sheet, and set a box down there and just shake the bees down there, kind of put a ramp up to your box and just let them march in. I like to put the box right underneath there, and that's where those little cardboard nukes come in real handy because they're light and you can hold it and then shake the branch with your other hand. But basically you're shaking them off of the tree. And sometimes if the tree's too high to reach, you can throw a rope and a rock over it and use that rope to shake them down. But basically you're just shaking them off there, hoping that the queen comes down and then she'll move into your box.
Do you have your stick thing for this?
Yeah, I do. Did it stop?
My video's not loading. I'm just going to try this while you're talking.
That guy doesn't have any sleeves on.
I know. He's brave.
I'm almost positive that's art.
It is.
It does look like art, doesn't it?
It is art.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Did you say that you like the dip boxes for small and medium swarms? You have better luck with them staying in there?
Yeah, also I have that excluder on it, and it's easy for travel, right? So I got these little wood boxes with a lid, and it has that spin disc on it, so after I get them in the box, I can close them up with the bin on it, travel with them in the truck with the AC going, and it has that excluder on it, so if it's a place that's near my house or it's a location I can come back to, and I'm in a hurry, I shake them into the box, but there's still a lot of bees flying, but I know that queen lands in that box after I shake them in, put the lid on it, put the excluder on it, I come back right at nightfall, all those bees are going to be in the box, because they're going to search her out. If y'all have ever watched, if you ever lose a queen and you really want to find a queen, throw a bunch of bees up in there, they're going to find that queen for you. It's the same thing with the swarm, and at nighttime they all go home, and so that's their new home, and I really like having that excluder on there. But
I've lost as many swarms as I've kept, but I use 10 frame boxes.
yeah, and so they are, well, I forget what Celia says, it's like, I forget the exact dimensions that they're always looking for, but the
40
tighter, yeah,
40 liters.
yeah. So the tighter it is whenever they first start off, the happier they're going to be. So that's why I like to start them off with a smaller box. And it is more work taking them from a smaller box to a bigger box. It's why they have something called a follow board. It's actually a board that you put in your hive to tighten them up to let them work like 4 frames, 5 frames. So they could just concentrate on that instead of having to defend the whole thing. So whenever they have to defend all that area, they're a little bit more apprehensive and they want to sometimes fly.
That's cool.
Cream bottom board or solid?
Solid.
Especially when they're swarms or small packages, because once they're established, having that much light into their hive doesn't bother them as much. But we've lost, that's probably our highest percentage of loss, is trying to get something to stay in something with a new hive to stay in a hive with a screen bottom board. They don't want to be there.
Yeah, I got a bunch of top bar hives with screens on the bottom. There were a couple swarms in there, couldn't get them to stick. Closed up the screen bottoms, they stick. Because it's a tight, dark space and that's what they want.
Would putting them into a shallow or medium-sized box accomplish the same thing as putting them?
Yes. So putting them in a medium or shallow, you're basically looking for that volume, the ratio of bees to comb space. You know, so technically, if you had, you know, a swarm or a cluster of bees that big, you might want to put them in a shoebox and let them draw comb out in there. Basically, you want to keep that size relevant to the size of the bees. Yes?
You mentioned top bars. The top bar box isn't quite as big as the Landstrom box, so how many frames would you recommend leaving in there before you put the block in there, if you're putting the swarm in there?
Well, when you say, you asked if the top bar and the Langstroth is the size, there's different top bars. So there is a 19 1/8 inch top bar design out there, a longer top bar. Your next standard size would be the 17 1/4 inch top bar. Volume wise, just 7 frames I think is what people usually run compared to 5 frames nuke size wise. But then again, it really has to do with the cubic inches or the cubic feet, or however you want to look at it, rather than the amount of frames. So small, medium, deep, you know, compress it, look for that area that the bees fill up. What I like to see is, personally, I like to see it where the bees don't fit in the box and they're hanging out on the outside until that comb is drawn out. So.
I can kind of address this thing. We do top bars.
Yeah.
And we do top bar nukes. And we have a 1 foot one that we build regularly to put in top bar nuke to build.
So 1 foot wide or by 17 1/4? Okay. So a standard top bar like this,
Yes.
1 foot wide.
Which is about 5 or 6
It's
frames.
6 frames.
Yeah, 6 frames? Okay, yeah.
It works wonderfully to catch a swarm in, especially if you've got an old piece of comb on it, of any kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, but they're very easy to build.
They also
And-
build faster in those, sometimes I feel like, than even the foundation frames. They love to build on nothing.
Well,
Yeah.
we put my husband does the glue because he doesn't like that, you know. Anyway, he'll take a piece of foundation, wax foundation, and he'll wax it in about 1.5 inches deep. And he'll wax it in, and they will go to that and work it.
Yeah. So basically, you still want to boil it down to that. And top bar nukes are good to build if you're going to keep top bars, have a top bar nuke around. There's actually Bee Friendly Austin, they're down there, Chuck and Tanya, they've actually got a production line going on the, it's kind of like the Jester nuke, it's the Coroplast box, where they're,
Heavy, those 1 foot ones are.
yeah, they're not bad, yeah.
You can take it if you want, you know, it's got that big space in there, and you can dump your bees in there, and then put the bars back real quickly, and then you can, if you want, you can take it home and put them in a Langstroth bar.
Yeah,
It's
so.
not that big a deal. Nope.
Or vice versa, if you catch them in a Langstroth and you want to put them in the top bar, you're just dumping those bees from one to the other. And just, you know, don't leave them in there 3 or 4 days and then dump them, because they're going to draw comb in the other, yeah. So, so we talked about shaking bees, clipping bees. We can't really get the video going good here, but basically, so I'm removing this hive here, the swarm here, from these branches, and I've just kind of cut the bees around there, and I actually just picked this thing up and just kind of set the bees in there. Actually, I think I grab a couple of handfuls first and set them down in there gently, and just move slow. Grab them, set them in there, clip all that brush around there. I think this was like a 30-minute swarm catcher. You know, that may seem like a long time, but it was really enjoyable. You know, I enjoy what I do. That's why I do it. You know, if you want to smash and grab and just shake them in there, hey, that works too. But I kind of enjoy just watching the bees and letting them crawl. And we actually found the queen on this and videoed it. And so it's a pretty neat video. I think Stan's got that one on your Hunk and Goose Media site. Is that correct, Stan?
Yes.
I believe so. So at the end, we'll have those links to the sites so you can go watch the video. So what do we got next? Oh.
You can just put the branch, put it all in there, the branch and all?
You can put the branch and all in there, or actually I just kind of set the branch on there and just let them migrate down in there. So I've got frames of foundation in there, and I'll usually leave 1 or 2 out to give them room to get in, and then I may set it down there. And a lot of times when I'm catching a swarm or even doing a removal, I'll have frames in there, and I won't know where the queen is. I'll let them settle down a little bit, and then I'll pull those frames back out and watch for the queen. And it just makes it a lot easier to find her when they're not in a big ball and they're more flat, because she stands up a little higher when you look down the frame. So, somebody else had a question back here? Okay. Well, that's a short. Yeah, I know. I look weird in that. So, luring bees, and I remember this video because Ashley did this time-lapse video, and this is not really a swarm, but this is an abscon swarm, because we force these things out of the brick. And what did it take, 5 minutes to actually get these bees to move out of that brick wall right there, find the queen, put her in the box, and then Ashley did the time-lapse video of the bees marching into the box.
So the same idea can work with luring. I mean, the idea behind luring bees works even in just swarm capture for bees that are swarming in your yard. And so that was just us showing how quickly that can actually happen once the bees decide to move into that box.
Yeah.
Would you explain the move them out of the brick?
Okay, so that was a forced abscon, and we talked a little bit about that in the class before. And so basically a forced abscon is where you're forcing the bees to abscond from their home. So on this particular one, we used your homemade mix, I think. Okay, so Justin has a mix of tea tree oil and almond extract, and mix it up and sprayed it into the cavity and smoked it. And the bees were out in like 5 minutes. That queen came out, caught it, threw it in the box, and good to go. So that's another type of forced abscon. So swarm traps.
I was just going to talk about capturing them a little bit.
Okay.
Because I feel like, so swarms, obviously you get calls for things like this. People, do you have one of these?
No, this is the one who's asking.
Oh, okay. You have like the regular swarms that you're just going to find. Those are awesome. But the other idea is making sure that anything that swarms from your yard that hopefully you catch instead of maybe another beekeeper or losing them completely. And so I just wanted to mention that there are some things you should do as a beekeeper, in my opinion, and that would include putting swarm traps around your property. This video, which I doubt is going to play because nothing else has, but this video is in our backyard, and we were just standing out there pulling weeds, and all of a sudden there's bees everywhere, moving into literally just those composite planter boxes that we screwed together, and we foamed up all but one of the holes from the bottom, and they moved into that. They have it completely and totally sealed up and propolised. We have regular nuke boxes and all kinds of stuff, so we've just experimented with swarm trap types, because as you can see, you have tons of options. So anyway, that was really all that is. Basically, baiting it is pretty common sense. Anything that smells like bees, they are more likely to choose than something that doesn't.
Do you bait the stuff that's around your yard as well?
You mean like
I
the...
always feel like you're trying to draw your bees out of your yard, bait them, versus just putting it out and catching them.
Yeah, no, we do.
Yeah.
We have, like, so this, for example, these that we made during the winter when we had nothing else to do for bees. We basically coated them in old slum gummy liquid from rendering wax, so that they smelled like they were bees, and these are in our yard.
You just feel like they're gonna leave anyways.
Yeah. Basically,
they're not going to leave unless they want to.
Yeah.
That's not attractive enough for them to leave their like souped up hive, you know.
They were gonna swarm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have healthy hives and you're not doing periodic maintenance on those hives, you get swarm.
Yeah.
2 weeks, all of a sudden you got queen cells, and they're going to swarm a couple days when those swarm cells hatch. So you'll get a swarm, and that's going to be that queen that was laying. So if you're going to catch one, you're going to catch one because you know that queen was viable because she was producing enough progeny to make a hive that was big enough, pulling enough resources that they were able to reproduce in the swarm.
So another case where I use the swarm traps is I'll get a call and people say, I got bees in my house, I got bees in my house. So typically in the spring when the swarms are really going good, what'll happen is you'll get scout bees coming into a house and they'll be all around the perimeter of the house trying to get in everywhere, and they'll get inside through all the little cracks and then they'll try to get out through the windows. So usually when I get a call like that and I look and there's no real place for bees to say that's a hive, so what I'll do is I'll set a swarm trap, and I like to carry some brood or dawn comb, and I'll set that swarm trap up that night. And I want to say 100% of the times I've done that, I've caught that swarm that night and came back and got it the next day.
They're pretty
So,
predictive. Their
yeah.
behavior right before a swarm is pretty predictive. In
So-
fact, just before this happened, we had a conversation thinking, I think someone's going to swarm because we were seeing bees surveying. You'll notice this activity a lot, like around your house, where they literally just kind of check everything out, especially for some reason if it's dark. They're like looking at it, going in, and I don't know. I don't know how to
They're scouting around, yeah.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So you get the bees that have already gone into somebody's eave.
Well, no, they haven't gone into somebody's eave. See, what happens is when that swarm's up in a tree, they're sending scouts out in all directions. And those scouts are coming back and forth. So if this scout over here comes back and it says, okay, here's a pretty good place over here. He tells 10 or 12 more bees, or she tells 10 or 12 more bees, let's go look over here. And they go over there and they're kind of just fumbling around because they're not used to the habitat. So they're trying to find a good place to move in. So you may have bees all the way around the house looking for the best place on that house. And they'll get inside and can't figure out how to get back. They look for that light, and it's typically just that 1 day window. And when you get there, you'll see bees all in the house everywhere. Well, typically when you have a hive or a swarm move in, they're in one location. You can see the bees coming in and out one location. But if you see them coming in multiple locations, it's usually a swarm scouting, fixing to move in. Set you a trap box. Because it's hard to catch 500-600 bees that are all around the house. So set that trap box out there. You'd be surprised at what you catch.
Are you facing the entrance in any particular direction?
Not really. Yeah. I try to hang mine about eye level, you know, when I'm setting one out like that. Or maybe a little higher. So I don't like to keep it over something that I can't reach off a little 4-foot ladder, you know, or whatever's around the yard, you know, or find a tree to set it in, that type of thing. So, we got a question here?
When you do the paper mache plant pots, are they empty that you put together, or I've seen them built like around the frame?
Okay, so you can put a frame in there, but they're going to do their own thing in there anyway. So I put traps out with frames, traps without frames, and you know what, you're going to have to open it up and probably cut that comb out and reframe it up.
And you're just hanging these over them or something?
I like to find other people's apiaries that are near me and then hang up all their stuff.
He's not kidding either. He's done that. So, and another swarm lure for those of you that have a lot of hives, simply take and wad up a bunch of old brood comb on a string, and you know, like a good trot line string. So, and then take that and find a limb over your hives, throw it up over there and tie it off on the ground. And then when a swarm first moves out, it looks for something to land on temporary while it sends scouts out. So your swarm lands up there, you see it, you go over here, untie the rope, and then you let the swarm down into your box. Makes it a lot easier, so, yeah.
Also, one thing you're going to need usually collecting swarms is a ladder. And this is a ladder I found from just the work I do, is they actually make collapsible ladders that are pretty awesome. They're aluminum, they're telescoping. You can fit them in your car. So if you're not blessed with a truck, and you're driving around a hatchback or something, you still want to catch a swarm, get one of these foldable ladders. They make them that they're 16 foot, expand all the way. They can go A-frame, 8 footers. So it's a decent sized ladder that you'll still be able to catch them.
Yeah.
We ordered ours.
So on that subject of small, there's a friend of mine, Scott Turner, down there in the Houston area, does removals, and he just retired from the sheriff's department, and he works out of a Honda Civic, and he did 4 removals yesterday. So it's not how big it is, it's how good you are.
If it's a true swarm, did you charge people for that?
I don't. And you know, I tell people sometimes if it's a pretty good ways, you know, I wouldn't mind if they pitch in for gas. But usually if it's a pretty good ways, I'm going to call another beekeeper and get that beekeeper to go get it. Because I'm real big in about not letting those swarms get into somebody's house. So if I can't get to it right away, I'm going to, you know, put it out there, post it on Facebook or call a buddy, go get that swarm. If they can't get it, then find someone else that can. So, but typically, no, I don't charge for a swarm. Okay. Oh, cool. So, we already did the tips, huh? So here's, back up one more. No, forward. Oh, tips for transporting. We didn't do that. So basically, all of y'all that were in there in the previous classes is basically the same thing. You want, if you notice the laundry bag down there, that's a good idea. You can buy those at, I think, Dollar General or something like that. You can throw it over a box and it'll actually contain those bees, so you can put them in the car with you, that type of thing. Screen covers or moving covers are nice to have if you're transporting in a hive body and it's in the middle of the day and hot. You want to keep those bees cool. Water, you can mist them down a little bit. Some people mist with sugar water. I don't really believe in that myself, but you can. I mean, that's basically when commercial beekeepers make up packaged bees to sell you, they're going to spray them down with sugar water, get them all sticky and clumpy, and throw them in a box, stick a queen in there, and put some syrup, and they'll be good to go. I don't carry sugar water around in the truck with me, so I just mist them with a little water.
As a side note on this laundry bag, I used one of Steve's back boxes and the screen top to catch a swarm, and it wasn't a shakeable swarm, so I couldn't get them all in there. Well, I couldn't find a solid lid to put over these guys, and so I have in my car, which is not a truck, this box with the screen, and all of the bees that couldn't find her immediately were just hanging out on top of the screen inside my car. So I didn't have one of these, but if you're wondering why you would ever need it, that would have been like the perfect use. Because the whole time I was like, oh, I hope these bees don't get angry because they're in a car with me.
Yeah, and another tip for if you're transporting bees at night, make sure you get gas before you stop, because those service stations with all the lights, you lose a lot of bees to those, and try to pump fast. Get out of there before somebody sees you.
They don't seem to be very aggressive when it's cold in the car.
No, turn your AC down, and typically I'm riding around, there's usually 20, 30, 50 bees in the truck with me. If it's at night, I'll turn that back dome light on and just keep going.
April, this couple bought 4 big boxes from Don, AC, and tried transporting them from Paris to Amarillo.
Oh wow, that's a long ways.
They had the air conditioner up as high as they could get it. They killed all the bees because of the condensation inside.
Yeah, and that's the one downfall to those chloroplast boxes, is they tend to hold a lot of moisture. If you ever notice, if you turn one of those upside down and it's like a gallon of water runs out of it, that's why I really like the nuke boxes that we use. So they're easy to make. You can go online and find the plan for a Ducote nuke. You can make 4 of them out of a sheet of 1/2-inch plywood. The little round discs that we use, I think they're $1.98 at Man Lake. Probably costs you more to ship them than anything else, but if you throw it in an order with the rest of your stuff, they're fairly easy to get. I warn you about buying those on eBay or Amazon. You're usually going to get them out of China, and they're going to come in about this big, because I know I got a whole stack of them at the house. And I know several other people that do too.
The nuke, he said, was Coates, which is
Coates.
Coates. Nuke, and it's a 3/4 inch plywood nuke plant.
Yeah. Well, mine's a 1/2 inch, 3/8. But, oh, and actually, if you go search out Facebook, I have one that's built out of 3/8 inch, and it's called Rainy Day Nukes, and those are really cheap to build. Question?
What's your opinion on using a shop vac if you don't have a box in it?
Okay, so a shop vac, I have used them, and actually I have I used to have a little DeWalt battery operated vac, and I loved it. But I've dropped 2 of them and broke them off of roofs and that kind of stuff. Well, no, actually I made one that's a portable nuke box vac with one of those DeWalt vacs attached to it, so it's a battery vacuum. But for a lot of cleanup and stuff, most of your shop vacs will have a filter in there. The key is go ahead and use it to vacuum and suck something down. Don't be afraid to do that. Just watch that pressure, use a big hose, and as soon as you get them in there, take and dump them in a box. So basically it's like shaking them down out of a tree. Don't leave them in that vacuum box for any length of time at all, because they'll overheat fast. There's no way to aerate them if the vacuum's not running. So just turn it right off as soon as you get them sucked down. Open that vac up. A lot of times I like to, when I'm opening any type of bee box that I'm fixing to shake out, bump it on the ground once, pull the lid off, and just dump those things in the box. So, not really on something that quick. I mean, if you have a really powerful vacuum, yeah. But if you have one of those like Bucket Boss vacs, or the Stingers or something like that, I don't think you're. I mean, I've done it enough time that I'm not seeing a lot of death from it. Now I wouldn't recommend doing a high-powered rigid vacuum, and the key is short term. I mean, those bees are flying 20 miles an hour is pretty much their top speed, and I don't think that vacuum is going to suck a little more. If you're worried about the vacuum being too strong, restrict that entrance or that intake with your hand, or the exhaust with your hand, and that will actually restrict the intake. So you can actually slow those vacuums down by just covering your hand over that exhaust, and that'll slow it down.
We saw a design to put a pipe on the inside with another pipe and control it. It actually seems more.
Well, yeah, but if you've got a design to build something like that, then you might as well build a decent bee vac. Yeah, so.
Cut a 2-inch hole in that vacuum and then modify the.
Yeah, duct tape works good. But like I said, you can do the same thing by blocking that exhaust. You're going to reduce the amount of air that's being pulled in. So. Tips for? Oh, that's what we started off with. But we're probably going to go, I don't know how much time we got, but we'll go into question and answers about anything y'all want to do pretty much now. So, yeah. So, any questions?
Yes, that temporary box is going to be how long will it stay there before you get
Nice job.
Oh, thank you.
I just wish I had half your knowledge.
Is this like an 8-frame box?